Hey, buddy. Rich with Prep U down here at my desk. Hey, today we are going to talk about winter clothing, the layered look. So very important in the winter uh, to layer, and that's especially important to retain body heat, to cover areas that you lose a lot of body heat, and especially when you get older and you start having thinning hair, you can lose even more. And if you don't have any hair up there, you can lose a lot of body heat. I'm sure you've all seen where people have been working outside and they have they're bald, and you can actually see the steam coming off the top of their heads. Well, if you're also like somebody like me that's got some pretty good ears, or radiators we like to call them, we like I need to cover my ears to keep warm, and feet is so very important. Um, and it doesn't matter, although wet can cause a lot of problems depending on the clothing. Um, but it's just the cold and the wind. And a lot of times you go outside and you think, oh, it's not bad outside, until the wind. You get into an area where there's no wind block and it's like, holy cow, in comes the wind chill. I hate the guy that ever came, or woman that ever came up with wind chill, because it messes with your brain. All right, it's cold. I don't need to know that it's like 10 degrees or 20 degrees colder on my skin. Thanks, wind chill dude or dudette. But anyhow, let's get into the layered look in winter clothing. I know a lot of you guys know this and gals know this, but especially if you're hikers or skiers, um, snowmobilers, um, ice fishermen and stuff like that. But there's a lot of people there that you see every day don't get it. And this is who this video is really for, but it's a good refresher for everybody else. Um, so when we talk about clothing, we talk about layers. We talk about a base layer, we talk about a mid layer, and we talk about an outer shell, and then I call them mandatory accessories. And then I also have some tips at the end of what I'm going to talk about that's going to keep you even warmer and safer in the wintertime. Okay. Now, what I'm talking about is basically really good clothing. Um, Cheap stuff really doesn't work. This is survival stuff. This is if you get caught outside, or if you want to have these base layers available to you in your truck, in your car, or whatever. But let's get into it. Okay, clothing base layer. Base layer, and when you talk about base layer, you're talking about either a synthetic mixed material or uh, merino wool. We are not talking cotton. And why are we not talking cotton? Since it's on your skin and you're putting layers on, you're going to sweat a little bit. Hopefully, not a lot. If you're exerting, you may sweat more than you want. That cotton is going to retain that. Okay. Synthetics are just going to let it go through the synthetics and go to the next layer. Wool will absorb it. But the nice thing about wool is, even if it gets really, really wet, wool still maintains the ability to keep the heat of your body up, and not like cotton, where you would actually, it would get soaked and then you would get cold because there's no layer between you and that wet cotton. So that's basically your base layer. We call it long underwear, long johns, whatever you want to call it. There's so many different kinds out there. The kind that I use for skiing, the kind that I have in my kit in my car, just happens to be Spider, which is really good. But you can get, I mean, REIs, you can get, Bass Pros, Cabela's, or whatever. You can use their stuff, which is really good. All right, mid layer. Mid layer, there's several different things you can use. Down is nice. It's nice thick. It's like insulation. There's air pockets in there. The only problem with down is if it gets wet, it loses its ability to keep you warm. Um, what a lot of people are turning to now is called Permaloft. I don't have any Permaloft. I've been looking for it. Probably just go to Amazon and buy it. But Permaloft is really good. Even when wet, Permaloft will keep you warm, and it will still whisk the water away from your body. So Permaloft is really good. Um, for that mid layer, fleece jackets are nice. Wool sweaters are probably the best. Like I said again, true wool, when wet, will still keep you warm. That's the crazy thing about wool. It just has ability, wet or dry, to keep your body heat. It's really good for you. Um, so you can go with a fleece shirt, a fleece, some kind of fleece pull up or pull over, a zipper front, which is really nice to, you can bring it up nice and close to your neck, keep the wind out. Then we go to an outer shell. Well, what do you want the outer shell to do? Really, you want the outer shell to protect you from the wind and from the wet. If you're in the Midwest, certain areas, especially around where I live, you get snow one day and it's slop the next day. Okay, so you want a good outer layer when you're walking around, that the rain just turns to mush, or the rain goes from or the snow goes from snow in the morning to rain midday, back to snow by evening. And if you're out in it, you really need to keep that moisture away from your um, mid layer. So a couple of things are good. Gore-Tex is really good. My ski equipment is all Gore-Tex based. Then there's a new stuff that's come out. It's called eVent. It's lowercase e, uppercase VENT. Supposed to be really good. I looked at it on the internet and it has super high ratings. So if you're looking for new stuff, eVent is the way to go. I remember when Gore-Tex was the big thing. So, but that's what you want your outer shell basically to do. You also want, when you're buying the outer layer, you want to look for a good hood, all right, with drawstrings. You want storm flaps on your zipper. You want something that's going to come over that zipper and snap or Velcro. And the reason for that is the wind will get through the zipper. That's just the way it is. And it's also a thinner part. You can't insulate around the zipper. So you want that storm flap to close and seal and stay. Velcro's the best. Obviously, Velcro doesn't get affected by wet or anything, or the cold. Or sealed seams. You also want sealed seams. A lot of the seams in your jacket, um, they'll seal them on the inside and the outside. It's some jackets I'll even recommend in there that buy a sealer that over time, breakdown of the sealing, I'm just going to call it wax. I don't even know what it is. Some kind of synthetic that's over the seams will break down, and you just rub this over it again, and it will help you out considerably. And then beyond that, we talk about what I call the add-ons. Okay, the add-ons are really important to think about it. Uh, Obviously, you need to cover your hands, feet, head, stuff like that. Your face, your cheeks can get really chapped if it's really dry out and stuff. Um, to protect your hands, you also want to think about a really nice um, Gore-Tex glove with maybe a Thinsulate lining, especially if you're going to have to work with it. If you're going to be out and just goofing around, maybe something you can get a bulkier kind of glove. But when you look at your gloves, you also want to look for a glove that has is touchscreen compatible, because then if your phone rings or whatever, or you have to text, you don't have to take your gloves off. Okay, there are some gloves, they're called, I've seen them, they're a glove, but then there's a mitten part that comes over the top. Really keeps your hands nice and warm if it's really cold off, and then you just pull the top layer off and you're back to just your glove, which is really nice to have. All different kind of manufacturers. It doesn't have to be the top of the line. You want those gloves obviously to be insulated. All right. You also want a good wool sock. Okay. Um, some people are allergic to wool, so you can go with a synthetic. But I want to show you something that I do. I know a lot of people do it. For those of you that don't know what a sock liner is, let me show you. First of all, here's a nice wool sock. They're really good, the perfect size. Sizing is important. You don't want them too tight because you want a little bit of lever layer between your skin and the sock. You don't want them too big because then it starts jamming your toes, and when you're walking, it will actually push the nail of your toes back a little bit, and you aren't going to be too happy. This is a sock liner. Okay, you can get them at REI. I'm sure there's other places, but you can see these things are really thin. Okay, there's not much to it. You can actually see my fingers. But what this does is, again, just like your base layer of synthetic, this is going to whisk away, all right, any moisture from your feet and bring it to your socks. All right. And that's going to make it go a little bit longer. Something I suggest that if you're going to be out and about, at least 3 sets or 2 more sets of these to have them in your backpack, your go bag, or whatever. If you know that your feet sweat, you want to make sure that you have that, especially if your feet sweat or you have issues. Think about having foot powder um, in your car, in your go bag, in your car kit, whatever, because you take one pair of socks off and your feet are wet, just put that powder on there and it'll dry your feet up, and then you can put the next pair of socks in. Um, Also, the best thing to do is have a second set of shoes. Shoes break down. Sometimes it takes 24 to 48 hours. I know when I was doing triathlons for 14 years, I had my training shoes and my race shoes, and I had 2 sets of training shoes because the soles would break down and then it would take 24 to 48 hours to come up. But it was also a moisture issue because the shoes would uh, grab the moisture from your feet and retain that in the shoes. Same thing with your hiking boots or your winter boots. You want to make sure that you have a couple pairs. I know this sounds like big dollars, and it's just something you'll accumulate over time. Um, you also want to add like either, and I always say this word wrong, so I apologize right off the bat, balaclava or a neck gaiter is really nice. You can get really good ones. I use them when I walk the dog and it's really windy here. Basically, the only opening is my eyes. The only problem is when I walk in the morning, I like my coffee with me, um, and I don't want to stretch it out. Now, be careful because you are going to get moisture in that. So don't be out too long with something like that, or switch out. It all depends on what you're doing. Um, that's really it. I'm sure you all have other tips that you use for being out in the cold weather. When I was a fireman, we had, we wore layers as much as we could, but we didn't want to obviously overheat. Uh, Car accidents on the interstate, we froze no matter what we wore just because of the wind. But we learned over time that good socks, good liners, good base layer, and when we got back to the station, get that stuff, off. Get down to just maybe a base layer and a t-shirt, a base layer and some sweats, because you didn't want to leave that stuff on. So when you come inside, you want to take all that off. You don't want to sit there and talk. You want to make sure you get it off so you're not like starting to sweat from being inside. You want to break that down. But beyond that, that's pretty much it as far as winter clothing. The only other thing that I want to talk about here is just something that we learned from winter camping uh, with the Boy Scouts is we drilled this into our Boy Scouts brain, is that whatever you slept in your sleeping bag that night, take it off. Start all over. I know it's cold in the tent. I know it's cold in the car, wherever you're at. You got to get that stuff off, because all night long, when you're all huddled up inside that sleeping bag, you're breathing. And what comes out with your breath but moisture? That t-shirt, the long johns, the shorts, whatever you're wearing, your pajamas, from sleeping in a sleeping bag or wherever, are going to retain moisture. You try to put other clothes over the top of it and then go out into the weather, it's not going to work. Besides, you want to get that off. You want to get your base layer, you want to get your mid layer, and then your outer layer on. So always, if you're inside for a while and you know that you're a little bit sweaty, before you go outside and do anything, get out of those, get into some dry clothes. Is really important. An extra 5 minutes of changing and being cold for a few minutes is going to might even save your life. It will definitely save your fingers and your toes, because it's the extremities, your nose, your ears, and stuff like that, that's going to affect a lot of that. So that's it. Just a little talk about the layered look in winter, especially when you're going outside, and to keep in your car as an emergency. If you go to work in the city or wherever, and you have to wear, dress shoes and a suit or a dress for you ladies and stuff like that, you want to have this stuff available. If you take the train, have a set down in your office, have it there, especially boots and gloves and hats. In the winter is not the time to worry about fashion. It's to worry about, your life and making sure that you can make it home if you need to. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Pass this along to anybody that you know. And please be safe this winter. Have a good holiday season. And as we always say, um, when we end our videos, thank you, subscribers. We appreciate it a lot. Thank you for commenting. And if you have any ideas or special ways that you keep warm in the winter, let me know. And to end this video, we want to say, always be aware of your surroundings. Always have enough food on hand, whether you shelter in place or bug out, for you and whoever's coming to your house to bug out, all your family, especially your pets. And please, please prep like your life depends on it, because it really does. Thanks a lot. Take care. See you next time.